Okay, John, can you hear me okay?
We can hear you perfect.
Great. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I'm delighted to be with you. I'm sorry for the communication glitch. My name is David Kent. I'm a dermatologist in Macon, Georgia. I'd like to welcome everyone to our webinar this evening. I think this is one of the most exciting technologies I have ever had the pleasure to work with. I am passionate about helping our patients with their body contouring. As John mentioned, I've been doing liposuction for almost 23 years now. And up to this point, we've really had nothing to offer our patients except targeting their fat. That's all we have. Now we have a technology that is truly a game changer, which is Emsculpt. Never before have we been able to target muscle and shrink fat at the same time. So it's my goal over the next 30 minutes or so to introduce you to this exciting technology and see what you can do for your patients and how we can turbo boost our practices. And so with that in mind, we'll go ahead and get started. So one of the things that I'd like to mention to our audience is, in terms of technology, the right technology attracts patients. And investing in your practice is truly one of the best investments you can make. The wrong technology, however, you can end up being DOA. When you combine the right technology with the right business and marketing plan, you have a very successful practice. This technology can generate a substantial income stream. The menu of services which your practices offer will vary. And the key is to offer complementary options that you're comfortable doing. And so the ability to introduce aesthetic procedures into your business or practice is not difficult, and there are many strategies to do so. We can certainly touch on that as we go through. So now we'll go ahead and jump in. The aesthetic market today is vast. People in the United States spent $15 billion on cosmetic procedures in 2016. The non-invasive body shaping is the fastest growing segment in the aesthetic market. 52% of Americans are considering aesthetic treatments, which is up from 2014, which was 30%. Now, muscle, as we know, is the underlying structure of our body, along with our bones, but it makes up approximately 35% of our body. Up till now, as I mentioned, we've only had the ability to target fat. Current devices, additionally, exclude many potential patients. Up till now, we've only been able to target patients with excess subcutaneous fat, patients who are thinner, have less fat, or patients who simply don't work out but have poor muscle tone have been overlooked. Another area which is very, very popular, which we're using this technology, is with new moms, mommy makeovers. But what's interesting up to this point, again, all we've been able to do is target fat. We've not been able to address muscle laxity or what's referred to as diastasis recti, when you get weakening and separation of the abdominal rectus. So really, the current aesthetic devices really don't have an alternative either to buttock procedures in regards to injectables or surgical treatments. There is a vast segment of patients which have thus far fallen through the cracks in all of our practices. And this is the group of patients that tend to have smaller BMIs. And we're basically talking about those that have BMIs less than 25. These are patients that typically have smaller amounts of subcutaneous body fat, and thus the current existing technologies up till now had nothing to offer these patients. Enter Emsculpt. Emsculpt is a true game-changing technology for the non-invasive aesthetic market. It is the only non-invasive procedure that builds muscle and burns fat, and we're going to spend quite a bit of time talking about how that works. This offers non-invasive buttock lifts that require no surgery, no needles, no anesthesia. Patients simply walk in, lie down, have a 30-minute treatment, and go about their normal routine. Additionally, Emsculpt appeals to physicians. Physicians who are looking for innovative body contouring devices, they can use this as a standalone item, which is what we do in an extensive amount. And you can also use it in combination with other devices, which we'll talk about. As mentioned, and we will mention again, the devices which are currently used for body contouring, which are non-invasive, only target fat. There's a tremendous demand for non-surgical buttock enhancement. Many patients refuse surgery, and there are obviously a large group of patients who are poor surgical candidates. So how does Emsculpt work? Well, you can think about it in terms of causing these absolutely very powerful supramaximal contractions. So it uses what's called high FEM technology, which is high intensity focused electromagnetic technology. So this focused energy, literally in a 30-minute treatment session, will generate approximately 20,000 forced contractions. And these supramaximal contractions can never be achieved through going to the gym or any kind of boot camps. And so you can see over here on the left, you have patients who might be going to the gym and doing some other workouts, but with Emsculpt, you get this train of supramaximal contractions, one after the other, that are incredibly intense. Now, as part of this high FEM technology, there are a variety of different phases of stimulation for muscle contraction. And these are illustrated for you in this slide. You can have an unfused, where you have a train, as you can see over on the far left. You can have a more intense reaction, more intense train of pulses, and then where you actually slow down and have just a few twitches. And it's the proprietary sequencing of these super maximal stimulation pulses to the muscle which cause the effect. So the mechanism of action, as we mentioned, for a 30-minute session, you'll get literally almost 20,000 induced contractions. And so with the muscle, you get two actual phenomena that occur. First, you get volumetric hypertrophy of the muscle, and you also get increase in the actual myofibrils or hyperplasia, which results in muscle growth. Additionally, we're going to see that you get a cascade apoptotic effect with fat loss. And so you get a combination of both muscle growth as well as fat disruption and fat loss. High FEM technology interacts with the motor neurons, and the sensory nerves are totally unaffected, and the skin remains unaffected as well. These supramaximal contractions are accompanied by a very intense metabolic reaction in the fat cells, which results in lipolysis. The fat cells are literally overwhelmed by this reaction, and they become dysfunctional and initiate programmed apoptosis of the fat cells, or cell death. This results in a combination of both an increase in muscle strength, muscle growth, and fat disruption. So you can think again about it in terms of its effect on muscle growth. What happens is the muscles are exposed to these intense contractions through the stimulation. These are not contractions that you can get if you go to the gym in any way, shape, or form. These are incredibly intense and rapid. There's the adaptation to these conditions leads to the efficient changes in the actual musculature. You get, as I mentioned, you get hypertrophy and hyperplasia of the skeletal muscle, which increases muscle volume as well as the fiber density, which is illustrated for you in this slide here. Additionally, the supramaximal contractions induce fat cell apoptosis. So these powerful muscle contractions result in extreme cellular activity that ultimately leads to intense lipolysis. There's release of these free fatty acids as well, triggered to be released from the triglycerides. There's an overflow of these free fatty acids, which causes further disruption and dysfunction of the fat cells, leading to further apoptosis. And ultimately, these fat cells are carried away through your body's lymphatic system. So, Emsculpt was launched in April, and 7 independent studies from across the country were done. And these included CT studies, which we did, MRI studies, Dr. Kinney, ultrasound, Dr. Goldfarb, histology, Dr. Weiss, circumferential waist, Dr. Jacob, as well as 2 buttock lift studies, which we will illustrate and highlight for you here. So this is how it all started. I have a conversation that says, hey, Dr. Kent, we have this new technology. Well, it's a magnet. It's FDA cleared. We think it has some aesthetic applications. So we'd like you to treat some patients and see what happens. We said, okay. So we start treating patients. My esthetician comes down the hall and says, Dr. Kent, you need to come see the patients that we're treating with the magnet. And I said, okay, I'll be there in just a few minutes. They said, no, Dr. Kent, you need to come now. And this is what we see. This is one of our first patients. This is a 52-year-old female who, during her course of treatment, which was 2 treatments a week, I believe she treated for 4 weeks, did not change any diet or increase or exercise profile. You can see the absolute change in the overall body contour, which is remarkable. The skin drapes smoother, the muscle wall is tighter, the fat is lost. And so when we saw these patients, we're trying to figure out, okay, what's going on here? So what we decided to do was a CT study. So we had 24 patients, and we get a baseline CT, and then give them their treatments, which are 2 treatments a week for 4 weeks in this particular group. And we got a CT 1 month following, and this is what we saw. They averaged approximately 4 centimeters in circumferential reduction, 19% in fat reduction, 16% increase in muscle mass, and what was absolutely remarkable was an 11% reduction in diastasis recti. There are 3 trials which are currently listed on clinicaltrials.gov, and we can get these for you here if you'd like to actually read the individual studies themselves. So there is good science behind this. These are just a few of our patients that we'll run through. This is just a before and 4 weeks after. 2 treatments a week for 2 weeks for this patient. Before and after. Before and after. And this is a CT scan which illustrates some of the changes that we were seeing. You can see on the left, you can see the before and after. And at 1 month, this particular patient had a 32% reduction in their fat layer, as well as a simultaneous thickening of the rectus sheath muscle of 28%. Remarkable. This is another patient in our study who, after their treatments, lost only 2 centimeters in his waist, which we weren't particularly impressed with. However, when we looked at his CT data, we saw another story. This patient actually experienced a 30% reduction in the subcutaneous fat layer and thickening of his rectus of approximately 8.4%. And surprisingly, a reduction in his diastasis of over 17%, which is highlighted here. You can see the difference in their diastasis before and after, reduction in fat from before and after, and thickening of the rectus muscles before and after. This is another patient which again just demonstrated reduction in diastasis or separation from the right and left rectus muscles. This obviously has huge implications for our postpartum patients who are not instructed to exercise immediately afterwards because all the exercise they do increases intra-abdominal pressure. This works without causing any increase in intra-abdominal pressure. Dr. Kinney in California, as well as Dr. Lozavana, did an MRI study looking at both the muscle and fat, and with their 22 patients, they showed an average of 3.6 centimeter of circumferential reduction, 18.6 reduction in fat, 15.4% reduction or increase in muscle, and a little bit over 10% in reduction in diastasis. And this is illustrated here in this MR study. You can see before and after. This particular patient showed a remarkable reduction in their subcutaneous fat layer, approximately 32.9% reduction. In addition, their waist size shrunk by 5.7 centimeters and had over a 19% increase in rectus sheath thickness. Another patient, 30 years old, had another remarkable reduction in the subcutaneous fat. You can see measuring here on this red line before and after. The rectus sheath here before an increase of 14%. 50-year-old female had a remarkable reduction of her fat layer by approximately 44%, a waist reduction of 6.4 centimeters, and almost a 20% increase in her rectus muscle thickness. Additionally, and simultaneously, ultrasound studies were also performed, and these were performed by Dr. Bruce Katz in New York, Dr. Bard, Dr. Goldfarb in Philadelphia, along with Dr. Shiloh and Dr. Kinilova. And you can see with 33 patients, they averaged very close to the same data that we had, 19% in fat reduction, 4.4 centimeters, that should be centimeters, not millimeters, in a fat layer reduction, and 91% satisfaction. These are some of the ultrasound data studies showing before and afters, and you can see the reduction in subcutaneous fat layers here, and the clinical pictures here. Again, the ultrasound study, but one of the things that was remarkable with this particular patient of Dr. Goldfarb's is you can see the absolute improvement in definition in their abdominal contour. I can tell you that these are some of the happiest patients that we've ever had in our practice. 48-year-old female, baseline, 1 month following. Here you can see a reduction in the thickness of the fat layer. Dr. Katz had the availability of a 3D camera system with one of his studies and was able to document this with both 3D and 2D digital photography. And this is a 44-year-old patient both before and after. And you can see that around the hips, it went from 1,047 millimeters to 965. Before and after of a 24-year-old female. And one of the niceties about the 3D camera system, you can see the areas where the volume loss occurred. Concurrent with the CT, MR, and ultrasound, histologic studies were also performed to try to get a better idea of what was happening at the cellular level. And so this was an animal study done by Dr. Bob Weiss and along with the veterinary team. And what they observed was that the pigs were measured before, after, and 8 hours after with biopsies. And what was startling is that on the 8-hour post-treatment punch biopsy, there was a 92% increase in the apoptotic index. Remarkable. So the study design was, you can see here, one of our our four-legged friends here on the left. They're ultrasound measuring the fat layer. You can see the Emsculpt, or the high film technology, was placed and secured. The pigs were treated for 30 minutes, and then biopsies were obtained. Blood samples were taken before and during, and 8 hours following. And one more thing, in terms of the enzyme levels, there was both the baseline immediately after and the 8-hour assays did show increase in some of the lipids, but certainly not terribly substantial. The CK, as you would expect, was definitely elevated 8 hours afterwards, which you would expect with intense exercise. The waist circumference study, which was a multi-center study done with Dr. Jacobs and her team, showed an average of 4.4 centimeters reduction in waist, average BMI of, again, less than 25, 23.8. Very high satisfaction rate. 95% of patients were happy. And before and after recognition by blinded evaluators was done in 89% of all paired photos. So in terms of what you can see in terms of before and after, again, here you can see the improvement in definition of their abdominal rectus. There's no existing technology other than high film technology with Emsculpt that will give you these changes. Just simply removing some of the fat won't cause improved and increased definition of the muscle. Again, before and after. Before and after. This is one of Dr. Jacobs' patients. Again, baseline and 3-month follow-up, 3 centimeter reduction in a 30-year-old. This patient had 4 centimeters. Again, these are patients with lower BMIs. This patient's 20. This one's almost 19. One of the more very interesting areas that we're using this on is for non-surgical buttock enhancement and lifting. Study done with Dr. Busso in Miami. 21 patients in the initial study with over 95% satisfaction rate. And the treatments caused significant changes in the gluteus muscles, which resulted in overall aesthetic improvement. And what we'll see is when we look at pictures, you can see the actual lifting of the buttocks. Absolutely remarkable, non-surgical. Again, with a multi-center study with a variety of physicians, you can see the appearance of the gluteus before and after, a much more aesthetic, much more attractive appearance. Definitely raised. You can see that the contour is so much more improved. Before and after. Another patient before and after. Before and after. The side view. Again, seeing a much nicer contour. These patients are lying prone for 30 minutes, and they just get up and walk out and go back to their normal routine. These are lateral digital images of a 28-year-old, which shows an elevated gluteal fold after 4 treatments, 30 minutes each. Again, this is a 35-year-old, which showed improvement of her shape and gluteal fold. Again and again. Again, patients who do not want to have surgery, who don't want to have injections, who don't want to have implants, there's no surgery. The patient just lies down, has a treatment, and goes on about their way. Again, where this really has tremendous impact, and what we're seeing in some of our patients who have who are postpartum and have dome-shaped abdomens, in terms of their ability to reduce the diastasis and tighten their abdominal walls. So they get rid of some of the unwanted fat, and they're able to begin firming and strengthening their muscle wall at a much earlier time. Now, the standalone therapy with Emsculpt is remarkable, and that is the majority of what we're doing with our devices. One of the added advantages of this technology is that it can be combined with other non-invasive fat removal systems, whether you're freezing fat, lasering fat, or using RF. It can also be used following liposuction, and we're doing studies in other areas as well to identify other anatomic sites of use. So it gives you really an opportunity to expand your practice with this incredible new technology. This is the only technology that targets muscle as well as fat. You can treat patients with lower BMIs that aren't suitable for other procedures. There's a large group of patients, and it is operator independent. So I have a couple of testimonials I'd like to play from some of our patients. So I'm going to go ahead and advance this here.
I have 2 grown kids and I have 4 grandsons. And you go years, you know, doing for others all the time. And then now, because I don't have to put out my daily time to kids or grandkids, I can put time into me. I'm not really into the more invasive procedures. I'm not really into anything that requires any type of surgery or cutting, bruising, you know, things like that. The Emsculpt I enjoyed because it was only 2 treatments a week, half an hour. Each treatment. Anyone can fit that into their schedule. You know, I went from having to cover my abdomen on the beach to wearing a 2-piece bathing suit. And so I have no, you know, imperfections on my abdomen now. So that does make me feel good because now I'm free to stand and take photos. You know, I don't have to, you know, hold my tummy in when I try to take a photo. I saw more flatness in my abdomen, more tone in my abdomen, and I did that with hardly no work at all. You know, you just let the machine do the work. The Emsculpt made me feel younger.
Again, your patients are incredibly happy. Here are a few more also I'd like to play for you.
It's definitely intense, but you know that something is happening. You know that something is working, especially even a couple of days later when you feel that, like you went to the gym and you're just sore. So you're like, okay, something happened.
It was sore, but it was the good sore. I thought, wow, this is great.
And I walked out of the first session knowing like something changed.
You're laying there and it feels like you're doing 1,000 crunches.
After the Emsculpt, I did feel like a really big pump.
I was like, wow, this is really, really working.
There is no preparation. You just come to the office, you lie on the bed, they put the machine over you, they turn the TV on.
So with the Emsculpt, it's 4 treatments over 2 weeks, 30 minutes a time. Which is 2 hours.
What's a half an hour, twice a week?
By the time you drive to a gym, get undressed, do your workout, what are you doing to get these results? Stair stepper, lunges, squats, bands, TRX, running, cardio, diet, everything into that. You're giving up 30 minutes, 2 days a week for 2 weeks.
When you compare the body shaping market, you look at what's available. When you're talking about going after fat, you can use lasers, you can use ultrasound, you can use cryolipolysis, you can use RF, which heats the tissue. And this new class of technology. You can use non-thermal magnetic energy to improve the muscle mass, shrink fat simultaneously. Now, let's go through some very important line-by-line items. Number one, consumables. With the laser technologies, ultrasound, and certainly with cryolipolysis, there are definite consumables. With RF and Emsculpt, there are none. You can also target patients with lower BMIs. There are literally thousands of patients who are not overweight but want their body looking much better. Muscle, it's the only one that targets muscle. And none of these other devices can do anything about lifting your buttocks. And there is no risk of thermal burn injury. It has 6 approved patents, and it is FDA cleared, patented non-invasive technology for both muscle and fat. This shows the device actually in place. It is very, very simple. The treatments are 30 minutes. It's 2 a week for 2 weeks, typically spaced 2 to 3 days apart. Setup is simple, and it is operator independent of the procedure. You can see that with the dual applicators placed on the buttocks, precise location is important to get the lift, and that is something that once you see it done and are trained, it's easy to perform. Now, again, what about the skill set requirements? For facial aesthetics, whether it's injectables or laser or liposuction or aesthetic breast surgery, you have to be artistic, and you certainly can't delegate this procedure if you're doing these. And it takes time and training to become proficient in all these. Whether you're doing facial rejuvenation, this is something which is provided by typically physicians only and requires a good deal of training. And you must be artistic. Body contouring, this is one of our patients from years ago for liposuction. You don't need to be an artist. These technologies instantly put you on equal footing. So you can see this would be someone who would be non-artistic going against someone artistic, and this is Emsculpt going against anyone. Again, this is non-ionizing energy. It's non-radiating. It's non-thermal. It has no effect on sensory neurons, only motor. In terms of the benefits, as we've mentioned, it's non-invasive, FDA cleared, launched with 7 proven studies of histology, CT, ultrasound, MR, buttock lifting, circumferential measurements, non-thermal. There are 0 consumables. It is operator independent. It is a tremendous draw for new patients, as we'll discuss in a few minutes. Again, non-invasive buttocks lifting, and there is 0 downtime. So in terms of the impact that this can have on your practice, again, patients do their homework. They're looking for cutting edge technology. They know now that there are devices that build and will define the muscle. This is the only device that targets patients with lower BMI, whether they be patients that spend time in the gym, yoga, or Pilates. This system has a very strong return on your investment and will add financial strength to your bottom line. What we find is that when patients come in for their treatment, they bring their friends, spouses, and significant others. It can be delegated to estheticians, and this is state by state regulation. Certainly in our state, this is delegated to our estheticians. And I haven't met anyone in our practice that doesn't want tighter abs and a more beautiful derriere. So I'd like to close with a couple of questions. First, can you make this work for me in my practice, in my business setting? And is there a market for these services? Most definitely. And a final point, final thought. How can you afford to add Emsculpt to your practice? How can you not afford to add this? It is a must-have technology. Any questions? I apologize for my voice. I'm just getting over laryngitis, and I hope I was clear enough for everyone, John.
Yeah, that's great, Doctor Kent. And so at this time, we have a few questions that have already come in, and I'll start those questions out for anyone else that has questions. Please start typing them in the chat box, and I'll read them to Dr. Kent in the order received. So the first thing is, Dr. Kent, obviously you gave a great scientific presentation, and you probably have treated more patients than probably any other clinical advisor. And so the biggest thing is, aside from the clinical study, what are you tactically doing to drive patients or market your device? I mean, you talk about how can people not want this, but the biggest thing is for the audience members, they're going to say, how can we market this device? So what are you doing since you've been so successful with the device? Can you share?
Well, that's a great question. In terms of marketing, each market has its own unique nuances. We are beginning to be more active with social media, with Facebook, Instagram. We do radio as well as TV. We do lunch and learns. When the patients come in and they can lie down and they feel it on their abdominal wall with only 10 or 15% intensity, they get it. They get it immediately.
It's not showing anyone else. So I guess the other question that we have is, you started out the beginning of the conversation with there's a potential for an annuity stream, and you didn't really elaborate further. Could you,
Yes, I think.
Kind of talk about what you're doing in practice, from your perspective, not others?
Yes. Well, one of the things that's important to realize is that when you're building muscle, we all know that if we spend time going to the gym and we are doing bicep curls and we develop our biceps, if we then go and hibernate for 6 months and nothing happens, that improved muscle strength and definition is going to disappear. So what we are doing is we're having a subscription club of which patients can buy a membership, and they can have one treatment every month or two. We're waiting for our 6-month data to come out, John, which will help drive the decision-making and how often we need to have the follow-up treatments. But we think we're going to give patients the option that they can pay a much lower fee and just have a built-in stream of return patients for just 30-minute treatment once a month. And literally almost all the patients, after they finish their initial 4 treatments, they're asking us about when can they come back and maintain their result, John. So it's a conversation that's very easy to have with your patients, and it's one that all of us who are doing this should be thinking to have, because we really want them to maintain their improvement. Now, I'd like to give everybody a small peek behind the curtain. We had a conference call last night, and we're talking about some of the early preliminary 6-month data coming in from some of the sites, and we don't have anything collated, but it looks like the 6-month data shows that the improvements that the patients have obtained early on, they're maintaining. And what's also important is that it looks like some of the buttocks study, the results seem to be getting better over time. So that's wonderful insight that we hope to substantiate going forward.
That's excellent. And so this next question seems to be a very hot question. There's about 14 people that have responded on it. It's started by Dr. Bourne. And I'll start the response, and you can feel free to respond as well, Dr. Kent. The question started with the applicator needing replacement every 300 treatments, and it continued amongst a number of different people. Dr. D says $10,000 for each. I want to clarify all these comments back and forth about the applicators. The first thing is, this is not a consumable, it's a service part. It's like your IPL filters. The problem is you're dealing with 2 different MRI machines, that need to be calibrated back and forth with one another. So yes, the cost is $10,000 over the course of 300 treatments. One of the physicians that was in that conversation was mentioning $33 a procedure. I think that if you look at some of the microneedling devices, that's way cheaper than some of those microneedling devices. And I don't know from your perspective, Dr. Kent, with what you know about the technology, you know, that these are really MRI machines, two of them together. Do you have any thoughts on it being a service part? And I mean, really, it is a very reasonable cost. This is not close to, as some people say, a cool sculpting cost. It's $1,050 for treatment to transformation. You know,
Yes, John, I'd love to respond to you.
Yep.
If this is truly not a consumable, this is not a device that you apply prior to your treatment. If you think about these treatment heads, these 2.5 Tesla magnets that are running at 90 to 100% duty factor all day long, it's like anything. It's going to eventually wear out. And you would rather be able to guarantee a patient that they're going to get full freight in terms of their benefit with a reproducible result. It's just like using an IPL filter, like you mentioned. Over time, if you use it often enough, you're going to need to get another one. Now, look at the cost. If you look at the average market price, it's between $750 and $1,000 per treatment. At $750 times 4, that's $3,000 minus $33 a few times. That's a pretty decent return in my mind, and one that I'm certainly willing to absorb as part of just a service of the machine.
Okay. So thank you for your thoughts on that. The questions are still coming, so I'm trying to scroll back up to the top. Just one second. Dr. Kovac wants to know how long the muscle size lasts for.
Well, what we're seeing, I can tell you about what we've seen in our patients. I like to see them back when they come. They're coming back now for their 6-month follow-ups, and we're getting photos, and we've gotten about almost 50% of our CT scans in. We've not gotten the data collated yet, sir, or Dr. Kovac, but what we're seeing is that with just by visual inspection, as well as tape measurements, they seem to be pretty accurate and very, very close to their images when they left. And again, we've not put them all side by side, but on review of several of them, their results have maintained. Again, what we're hearing and what we're hearing preliminarily before all the data is collated for the buttock study is that some of the patients actually are continuing to see improvement in the contour and shape of their buttocks. So here you have a result that's getting better in terms of the buttock area. So we are going to be starting again offering. We have the call it an annuity, but more of a membership in terms of that they can determine how many times they want to come. You know, it's nice to have patients love to have options, John. And you may have some that want to come the bare minimum. You're going to have some that want to come more. And it's important to manage their expectations. It would be unreasonable to think you'd want them to come every week going forward, because that's certainly impractical and not cost effective. But what was fascinating that we found in the study initially was that my initial patients had 2 treatments a week for 4 weeks. But what was interesting, when you plotted the data points, over 90+% of the improvement occurred by the 4th treatment. So that's why the protocol is for 4 treatments. So 2 treatments a week for 2 weeks. It's so easy to, our patients find it very easy to put into their schedule.
Great. I'm still going down the list of questions. Let's see. Do you have to worry about kidney functions or any risk for incidents of rhabdomyolysis?
Rhabdomyolysis?
Yeah.
No. The contraindications that we follow, we don't do anyone. We've been very conservative. We obviously don't treat anybody with an implanted defibrillator or pacemaker. We don't treat anybody who has an implanted IVC filter, vena cava filter, spine stimulator, plates and screws in their spine, mesh following a hernia procedure. We've been very conservative and not wanting to push the envelope in a safety direction. There are plenty of patients that don't have that group and would prefer to be risk averse.
Great. And just also if you touch on, the target sensory motor neurons too, correct? So that also helps.
Yes, we're only treating the motor neurons. There's been no dysesthesias. There's been no post-treatment discomfort. Patients have, other than saying it's the workout of the century when they get up, they're fine. We've had no change in bowel habits. We've had no nausea and vomiting. It's just been remarkable.
Great. Dr. Thomas has another question, and I mean, all I know is it seems like it's different for each of you what you actually charge. But he said for abdomen and buttocks, are they the same cost per session, or do you differentiate the price?
The cost per treatment that we do is between $750 and $1,000. I'm not in the largest cosmetic market in the United States, and so we're on the lower end of that. We're at $750. In Houston and in New York, I'm sure they're charging full freight.
Okay. And Dr. Kovac has another question. He says, what's the optimal time or to get a visible result for the patient?
We have patients that come in after their first treatment and can see improvement. I think your thinner patients are going to see results quicker. But it's remarkable. Again, you're only talking 4 treatments. And so clearly when they come back after their first week, you can typically see a very nice improvement. Most of our patients, you can see an improvement after the first treatment.
And I guess just to, add perspective to all this for everyone, obviously there's some CoolSculpting users, there's some Sculpture users, some Vanquish users. I know you have multiple devices in your practice too. Most of the devices, it takes, at least a few weeks. You're going through your treatment, protocol, right? You're in it. Here you're done in 2 weeks, is what you're done in. And I guess, are your patients happy in 2 weeks? Are they feeling something? They're seeing something? And then, a month from that time, is there continued improvement? Because we can go down the road of Vanquish, 2 weeks start to see results, and 1 month post treatment follow up. You could do same thing with Sculpture. You can do same thing with CoolSculpting. So with this particular, I guess, question, what are most of your patients seeing in your opinion? Optimal average.
I can break it into several categories. First would be their patient's perception and their significant other's perception. We've had spouses come in and go, she looks phenomenal, or her buttock looks great, or her clothes fit so much better, or they've got to go buy new wardrobes. The satisfaction for patients has been overwhelming. And the biggest testimonial I can give you is when they come in and they bring their friends. They go with their friends. They might be in a yoga class, stomach showing or whatnot, and they say, "What have you been doing other than working out?" And it's like a wildfire out there. The word of mouth is very, again, people get on Facebook and social media and Instagram, and off it goes. But overall, the patients are incredibly satisfied and feel excellent value for what they've gotten.
Okay, so I guess with that said, I would like to thank everyone for taking the time to join us for this evening's webinar with Dr. Kent, and also thank Dr. Kent for filling in for Dr. Kinney, providing all his insight on this product since he is one of the earliest adopters of the device. And thank him also for bearing through his laryngitis. So thank you to each of you, to Dr. Kent, and we wish you a good evening. Thank you all.
Thank you. Enjoy being with you.